For those of you who are tuned into this, I want to welcome everybody. I'm Jordan Pickens with the Ohio River Valley Council number 104 of Allied Masonic Degrees here in Ohio. And we have a special guest presentation tonight, Demons of the Temple, Re-examining Solomon's Builders. And our guest speaker tonight is Burks Norrod. Did I say that right?
You did. That's perfect.
All
That's
righty.
perfect, Worshipful Justin.
And the purpose of this title is to spark conversation, to talk about what makes our craft truly unique from other fraternities in our ritual and our esoteric education. These elements are too often overlooked, and this presentation will encourage us Masons to take a fresh look at what is contained in our ritual work, as well as the allegories and the deeper lessons of the craft. Brother Norrod has been a Mason since 2012 when he first joined the lodge in Virginia at Herndon Lodge number 264, where Masonic education and ritual work has always been his focus in the craft. He left Virginia in 2016 and moved to Idaho, where he served as the president of the Beehive Club, which was a Masonic education group that met monthly and had members to deliver thought-provoking presentations to help us learn a little bit more about Freemasonry. He moved to New Mexico in 2021 and affiliated with Sandoval Lodge number 76, where he now serves as the sitting master. He's continued the focus, making Masonic education and degree work the central theme of their two-stated communications each month. So we look forward to your presentation tonight, and without further ado, the floor is yours, Worshipful.
Well, thank you, Worshipful Jordan, for having me, and thank you to all the brethren who came out this evening to attend your Allied Masonic degrees meeting, and to all those on Zoom who are watching this presentation as well. Yeah, I like Worshipful Jordan did mention, I mentioned to him that Masonic education and ritual work has really been a focus of my Masonic career, and that's really all I focus on. And I'm one of those that I tend to question everything. So this rabbit hole of esoteric knowledge tends to get deeper and deeper for me the more I know I go down it. But before I start, and again, I do want to thank very much to Worshipful Justin Elliott for noticing some of the Facebook posts that I made for my lodge and our newsletters and that sort of thing, which led me here this evening to give this presentation to you all. But before I do start, is Brother Logan Sky, are you on here via Zoom? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. So,
I see him here. I see his name as a viewer.
Logan Sky. Okay.
Yeah.
Brother Logan, say hi if you're on here. All right. So anyway, so the reason. Oh, there you are. Hey.
Can you hear me?
How are you doing, man? Yeah, loud and clear, brother.
Great. Yes, thank you so much, Worshipful. Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you.
Well, the reason why I bring up Brother Logan is because Brother Logan at our last meeting, so I encourage all of our members of our lodge to give us presentations on various topics. That's all we do. We just do Masonic education or degree work. And the most recent presentation we had was from Brother Logan Sky, who's a chaplain of our lodge. And he gave a presentation on the Knights of Pythias. And along the way, I found out that several of you folks are actually members of the Knights of Pythias. There is no Knights of Pythias lodge in New Mexico, but I do believe the Supreme Chancellor, he has a home there in New Mexico, and I think his name's Donald Stam. But if we're able to get a hold of him, would love to have him give us a presentation on the Knights of Pythias in person in a lodge. I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, thanks for being on here, Brother Logan. And so again, Brother Logan is a chaplain, the chaplain of my lodge, Sandoval Lodge 76, out of Rio Rancho, New Mexico. The reason why I wanted to give a presentation on examining the demons of the temple is because I feel that there's so much to Masonic education and ritual work that goes missing. There are a ton of do-good Masonic fraternities that exist. For example, just 2 doors down from my Masonic lodge, we have the Elks. We have a couple of members in our lodge that are members of the Moose, and so on and so forth. And a lot of the reasons for their creation, a lot of it is brotherly love, relief, truth, charity. A lot of these are the same Masonic elements, same ideals of Freemasonry. So at the end of the day, if that's all what brothers focus on, what makes us so different? And so that's why I've really dedicated my time to the esoteric work and to the ritual work of Freemasonry. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. So then this is where I begin at. So, and this is re-examining Solomon's builders, because we are told that we are builders. Well, what are we building, right? So, so this is, I think it's extremely important, because when I first became a Mason in 2012, one of the first things we learn out of our proficiency is, whence come you? And well, we're lodged with the Holy Saint John at Jerusalem. So right away, we start learning that the allegories of Freemasonry is centered right around King Solomon's temple. And that's what really induced me to really try to figure out more about what King Solomon's temple is and why it existed and why does it have anything to do with Freemasonry itself. And so I think this is extremely important to have examined. I started reading books about King Solomon's temple, as well as trying to figure out where was it specifically and what archaeological evidence existed. And I found that there was none. And so I did realize at the time that everything just appeared to be one massive allegory. And so instead of trying to, bang my head against the wall, trying to really nail down where this temple was and why it existed and all these kinds of things, I thought that trying to learn the lessons of what was contained here is the most important thing. So, and as you can see in that picture there, you have, King Solomon with demons building the temple. And so, but if you do notice, he's carrying a scepter, very similar to what we carry in the lodge with our gavel, as the sign of authority. And so basically he had authority over the demons. So, allegorically, all Masons carry a gavel because we have, authority, and, we're taught to control our own demons. So if you ever hear the term, Masonically speaking, being on the level, giving a square deal, being blackballed, those are all Masonic terms. Well, what about the term chasing your demons? That's also technically a Masonic term if you really dig into it here, with all this allegory. I had a tremendous wealth of experience in Freemasonry, and a lot of it does change the way how I think, even with the presentations that I give, because sometimes these throughout learning different things, I come across new information, and then it just gets me to reformulate my thoughts and opinions about the same topic. And to illustrate a picture here of what it is as both a master Mason and a master magician, this is a picture of myself there in the OTO ritual magic garb. And of course, there as master of the lodge. But the purpose of this presentation really is to, again, encourage brethren to study their ritual work more deeply. Having gone from Virginia to Idaho to New Mexico, I've had to constantly relearn ritual work. And I don't know if, some of you folks are call yourself ritualists, meaning that you learn the lectures and the charges and all these kinds of things and confer all degrees. Well, that's what I did in Virginia. When I went to Idaho, I had to redo it. And coming to New Mexico, I've had to relearn it all over again. And I'm looking forward to completing my year in the East so I can actually go ahead and join the York Rite and learn its lessons. And the only reason why I haven't done it so far is because I've been spending all my time relearning Blue Lodge ritual work. So there's a ton of esoteric lessons in these degrees. So, for example, we learn right away as an entered apprentice that we're divested of all metallic substances, right? Not only that, but we also learn in the EA lecture that there was heard not the sound of axe hammer or any tool of iron. This is extremely important. And it's very important to the allegory of the building of King Solomon's temple. And the reason why I say this, and I'll show you in future slides, is that there is an alternative thought process to how King Solomon's temple was built. And it concerns the use of these 72 demons that were used to build the temple. That God gave Solomon total control over to control these demons, which allowed him to build it. And of course, the demons, they did not, one element they did not like was the element of iron, very important, which is why you see around cemeteries, you don't see white picket fences around cemeteries. You see iron fences. And there's a reason for that. Iron fences have been used to kind of ward off the evil spirits or to keep the good ones in. So iron was very important. And that's also part of the illusion as far as why Masons were divested of all these metallic substances, is that you do not want any of this extra material into the lodge, especially iron. But another allegorical thought process is that it could have affected the spiritual aura of the lodge as it appertained to the 7 planets that goes into all of this. So this really just scratches the surface as far as the idea, the importance of studying Masonic ritual to understand what our words mean. It's extremely important. Go into here. So as a basic introduction to King Solomon's temple, as you know, it's central to biblical, mystical, and Masonic traditions, right? So the legends of King Solomon's temple does come from Jewish mysticism, right? Islamic lore and esoteric writings, and it introduces spirits or demons as the builders. And Freemasonry inherits these allegories as symbols of inner transformation. Real important, because if I were to ask anyone what is Freemasonry, a lot of folks could have different interpretations or definitions of what Freemasonry is. But if you listen to a ritual, it says, well, it's a peculiar system of morals veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. So what we're doing is we're learning what these allegories are, as what these symbols are, to ultimately improve ourselves as men. One example is our ashlars, the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar. Okay, and we talk about what is Freemasonry. Well, we're all about taking good men and making them better. It's illustrated by those ashlars. And if you really dig into it a little further, you learn that it's more of an alchemical transformation. And in alchemy, as you know, it's kind of like the art of taking a very basic substance and turning it into gold, turning lead into gold. And which is kind of what the idea is when it comes to rough ashlars to the perfect ashlar. So the temple itself is really less about the stone and the mortar that's associated with the building of it, and it's more about the spiritual edifice that we end up building within ourselves. Now, there is a book called The Testament of Solomon, and it's about the seal. And so if any of you are historians or, very familiar with King Solomon's temple and the purpose of its building is that it was designed to house the Holy of Holies, or the Ten Commandments. And and it wasn't King Solomon himself that was meant to build the temple. It was his father, King David. And but as you know, King David sinned. And because he did, God told King David he's not going to build a temple, but his son was. And so, of course, King Solomon, being who he was, he prayed to God. He said, you know what? I understand that I need to build this temple to house the Holy of Holies. Help me out, God. Help me make it perfect. And so God gave him this ring. It became known as the Seal of Solomon. And as long as he wore this ring, it allowed him to command the demons, the spirits, the jinn. These demons, they were not technically an evil entity, but they were spirits. And they assisted him in quarrying, transporting, and shaping the stones for the temple. So as long as he wore that ring, it allowed him to go ahead and do that. So the seal itself here represents the wisdom and authority over unseen forces, both external powers and our internal passions. And speaking of internal passions, one of the biggest things that a lot of our EAs struggle with is to get past the EA proficiency. Because what do they have to do? They have to start subduing their passions by spending at least 20 to 30 minutes a day to get through their ritual work. And it's extremely difficult for them to do that, some of them anyway, and they never make it past the EA degree. I know in my own lodge, we have several. And I don't know how it is for Ohio, but in New Mexico, learning the Master Mason's proficiency is not a requirement. And as a result, most Master Masons never get around to learning what's in the Master Mason's proficiency because it's not a requirement. So it really becomes, the more we progress as Masons, it's more about learning to subdue our passions and figuring out what is important. So there is a Goetic tradition of these demons in King Solomon's temple and that sort of thing. So there is the Ars Goetia, and it lists 72 demons that King Solomon found into service. And it's important. A couple of things are important. One is the number 72, because the number 72, even though there's a list of 72 demons, and each having a different name and each having a different power and that sort of thing, 72 also alludes to the names of God. So God had 72 names. There's a lot of intricacies with the number 72 itself. And so again, each of these spirits had specific skills. They were constructors, they did metal work, knowledge of secrets, and they symbolized the forces of nature and the aspects of the human psyche. And I think it's extremely important to understand this, because the idea is that if you could understand who these 72 are, you would better understand what their powers are and how you can harness it, how you can control it. And this is what I mean by being able to control your demons, because it's hard to control what you don't know. So if you were to understand the 72 forces of nature, or the 72, thought processes of the human psyche, you would better understand yourself and be able to control all of those demons and just really improve yourself time. If you're able to improve yourself, the world will change. And so the idea of demons itself is not about evil creatures, but it's about energies that must be directed. And it's much like the passions and desires in Masonic teachings. These types of, and the reason why I'm really enjoying giving this presentation this evening is because it's not something that is well received in the traditional Blue Lodge. You talk about demons, and they think that, what are you talking about? That they want to end the story as soon as possible. So, but the idea is that if you were to understand our ritual work, you could better understand what is being alluded to with these allegories as we go into it. So, esoteric interpretations, demons. Well, what are they? They're untamed passions, the instincts, and they're your inner vices. They're the voice in your head, right? Solomon, who is he? Well, he's a master within, and using wisdom to control and channel these forces. And it's about taking control of them. And then the temple. What is a temple, right? King Solomon's temple. It alludes to the perfected human soul, and it's built through discipline and mastery. So, but again, this entire story of King Solomon's temple is an allegory because a temple was built in silence. And the inner temple must be built with discipline and not the clamor of uncontrolled passions. Right. So, and then his connection to Masonry. Well, Masonic teachings don't literally reference demons, but the lodge is seen as a symbolic temple, right? And Masons must subdue their passions. They're demons. These passions, their passions could be the demons within you, and channel them into a more productive labor, just as King Solomon built the temple with these demons. So must the individual Mason build themselves by understanding this and being control over their own demons. And King Solomon himself is revered as the archetypal master Mason. And so, as Masons, speculative Masons, we're not literally builders of King Solomon's temple, but we're builders of ourselves and the work of the craftsman. Like, what is our work, right? So, just as spirits shape stones, Masons shape our rough ashlar into a perfect ashlar, as I mentioned earlier, turning that base metal into gold, taking a good man and making them better. The allegory is inner demons are not destroyed, but they're disciplined and transformed into tools for progress. So, extremely important to understand who our demons are, because every Mason is a craftsman of his own soul. Some comparative traditions, right? We got the Jewish Kabbalah. This is where King Solomon commands spiritual forces through divine wisdom. And I got into the Kabbalah back in 2013, and I even went to these synagogues just to study the Kabbalistic school of process with actual rabbis, just so I could understand what this was about. The Islamic tradition, the jinn, served Solomon by Allah's will. And then Masonic interpretation is the allegory of the inner mastery and enlightenment. And, we hear this over and over again, but the message is really consistent that man can master unseen forces through divine wisdom. And I think these demons represent the unseen forces. Symbolic lessons for Masons is that every Mason confronts his demons. The rituals remind us that true mastery lies in balanced discipline and spiritual work. And the temple is not a building, but the edifice of character and virtue. And the whole lesson that we have here is all about balance. And, it's because passions aren't destroyed, but they're redirected to build character. And when we talk about balance, this is another huge element, and this is where, as you know, one of the main philosophies where Freemasonry derives from is Hermeticism. So that's another topic I've dug into quite a bit. We learn about the 7 laws of Hermeticism and that sort of thing, and about balance and good and evil, and truth and error, that sort of thing. So it's as within, so without. As above, so below. Everything is about balance. So that's really what the symbolic lesson is for Masons. But in conclusion, the legend of demons building King Solomon's temple is a myth, right? It's about allegory and instruction, And Freemasonry teaches that even base instincts can be transformed into tools of light. And we are builders not of stone, but of ourself. And as we reflect on these lessons, the idea is not to be distracted by the sensational, but to focus on the allegorical, the building of our inner temple with light and wisdom. And in the next couple of slides here, and I'm covering this. I believe it's probably about 30 minutes or something, but I want to show you some of the references to this for further learning on what this topic is. So one, it's Holy Bible itself. This is where we get a primary source of real information on the building of King Solomon's temple, and it's listed right in First Kings and Second Chronicles. There is another book called the Testament of Solomon, and it describes King Solomon's use of the seal to control spirits and demons. And then the Quran, the Muslim book, mentioned Solomon as well and the jinn that served him. So these are things that you can actually make connections to. The Talmud, there's rabbinical discussions, including references to Solomon's wisdom and command over spirits. The Zohar, it's a foundational Kabbalistic text. Lots of allegorical interpretations of Solomon and the temple itself. And the Book of Mysteries that connects angelic and demonic powers and that sort of thing. We also have Western occult and goetic sources, the Ars Goetia, which is the lesser key of Solomon. And it lists very specifically the 72 demons said to be bound by Solomon himself, the names, the powers associated with them, as well as the key of Solomon. And I don't know if any of you know who Brother Lon Milo Duquette is. I didn't put it on here, but Lon Milo Duquette, he's a Freemason himself. And he has a great book out there, which is very easy to read and understand. It's called The Key to Solomon's Key. And he really makes solid connections with Masonry and ritual magic and that sort of thing. And then we have the Masonic and esoteric commentaries, Morals and Dogma. It actually interprets Solomon's temple in allegorical ritual. It's important about this book, Morals and Dogma, because so many folks have a copy of this book, but because it's about 1,100 pages and it's written, during a time where, maybe it's hard to understand, but there is an excellent course put out by the Scottish Rite, the Master Craftsman's course on philosophy, and it covers this book in detail by 33 different quizzes. If you're interested in learning Morals and Dogma, it's best to take it as a course versus trying to read it yourself. And then there is The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. He has a lot of information in there. Esoterica by Albert Pike. Deeper Meanings of Masonic Ritual, even Solomon's Allegories. That is a book I recommend all Master Masons to learn right away. And again, just like Morals and Dogma, not to read it by yourself, to take it as a course because it will help you better understand it. And the Master Craftsman's program put out by the Scottish Rite does cover. It's like $60, and you just need to get the book, and you can do it online too if you want. The Builders by Joseph Fort Newton, Masonic text on allegories of King Solomon's temple, and Solomon's Builders by worshipful brother Chris Hodap, who also wrote the book Freemasons for Dummies. So great, that these are great authors, and it really, if you get these books and kind of read through them, you'll get a better understanding for the allegories behind all of this. Suggested starting path to learning more about this, where we talk about the demons of the temple and such, is a Testament of Solomon. The Ars Goetia, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, and even Morals and Dogma. That's put out by Albert Pike through Masonic point of view here. So with that, brethren, I know I was given a specific period of time here for this, and I could really speak about this all night, but here's my contact information. I'm happy to chat with any brother more about the demons of King Solomon's temple and how I've made all the connections from Masonic ritual work to understanding. To understanding all of this. So let me kind of put down from that to stop sharing. All right. Cool. Everybody see me again?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Fantastic. So yeah, brother, I've been kind of well known to spend 2 hours in a presentation, and it just goes on and on because I've got so much in my head I want to have to come out. But I hope this was something that kind of helped to scratch the surface of what I meant by the demons building the temple, re-examining it. Because it can kind of come off as negative in a way, and it has when I've given it in some Masonic lodges. But I do want to reiterate that all of this is an allegory, and it's because what is Freemasonry? It's a system of morals veiled in allegories, illustrated by symbols, and and I think the more we understand that, and the more that we encourage the studies of this, our craft can grow. I think we can grow because if you notice, and it's in New Mexico is the same thing. It's everywhere throughout the country. Masonic membership has consistently dropped since 1959 from 4.1 million members, roughly, to right over 800,000. And in New Mexico, we lost maybe 70% of Masons since 2010. I keep track of all these numbers to the Masonic Service Association of North America. And I think the reason why these numbers continue to drop is because more and more men are, they can get their information online, through these podcasts and things like that, right? Books, other social media platforms. So if you can do that, why show up to the lodge? Why even knock on the door to become a member in the first place? Like, where's the lure to that? And I think that by focusing more on the lure, which is the esoteric education and the ritual that comes through ritual work, I think we could improve the craft as a whole and grow our fraternity. And I really appreciate all that you do and Worshipful Justin has done with the craft, because it's quite evident. It's like osmosis. Other Masons, they kind of gravitate towards you and they learn more and they stick around. Which is great, and hopefully they share that knowledge on along the way. So
right,
with that, yeah, yes, sir.
I was going to say, I thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm still in awe. That was amazing. So, thank you.
Yeah, we've had Masonic Con here. I don't know if they have it in Ohio, but we have it here in New Mexico. And the presentations I do are magic and Freemasonry. I do it on religion and Freemasonry. Sometimes you get into these taboo topics somewhat because it encourages discussion and, a better understanding of what these things are in the first place, So that this way it's easier to have these conversations with even prospective members to show up and start asking you about things. Because a lot of brethren now, I tell you, a lot of prospective members, they'll show up asking a ton of questions that they saw online, and a lot of our own members can't explain it. So I think it's extremely important to better understand our craft so we could, just make the fraternity be Freemasonry. So does any brother have any questions or thoughts on this? Is this like the first time? Sometimes a lot of folks maybe have heard about this allegory.
I just want to say that I thought it was absolutely fascinating. A lot of these topics I have heard before, maybe not necessarily so in depth. And I've read extensively about Hermeticism and Kabbalah, um, and I really like how you tied that in and acknowledged it. A lot of people really don't understand how deep a lot of the roots of Freemasonry actually go and all the different turns that they take. Um, so I really enjoyed how you addressed that.
No, it's my total pleasure. I mean, a lot of it is not stuff I came up with on my own. It's from reading the book, going through the book Esoterica, by Albert Pike. As soon as that course came out by the Scottish Rite, I did that program right away, and that's why I learned about Hermeticism and Rosicrucianism and how they were kind of like the bedrock philosophies of Freemasonry, along with alchemy. So this is just where my thought went ever since I've really became a Mason. So
Recently I did a paper on egregores, and one of the things that you didn't really touch on, well, you kind of briefly touched on it,
yes.
but the egregores that we create in our Masonic lodges, and how that also feeds into um, uh, some of the things that we discussed here. And I would like to hear your thoughts on egregores, what we can do to improve them, and how that we can make our lodges and just Masonic bodies feel more inviting to people who are coming in for the first time. I know a lot of lodges, they're bringing back such things as the chamber reflection, and I want to know if you are familiar with that and what your opinion is on it.
Great question there, Worshipful Justin. Yes. As a matter of fact, being master of the lodge, there's a lot of elements to Freemasonry that I've experienced over time, that I was exposed to. And I did what I could to infuse it in my own lodge. So, yes, we have a chamber of reflection. We have a chamber of reflection. We put all of our candidates through it. First, EA, fellow craft, and master mason. We put them through this chamber of reflection. It's a great moment for them to sit there and contemplate what's about to happen, life in general. I mean, they're in this chamber of reflection. It's dark, there's candles burning. They're looking at a skull, and an hourglass has been turned upside down in a mirror that they're staring at. And one thing one of the brothers had mentioned to me later was that he says, "Oh my goodness, man, I was a little freaked out by this. I was thinking something was going to jump out of that mirror." you know. But it was really, really great, and but I think it's important to really get the senses involved right away in Freemasonry: the hearing, seeing, feeling, smelling, and touching. If you can activate those senses, it becomes much more meaningful, I think. So, for example, there is I've used incense in our lodge this year. And the incense, was a type of incense that specifically would have been burned at King Solomon's temple himself during that period of time. So it's very interesting, if you can get your senses to smell when you show up to the lodge room and realize that you're not just in a building. I mean, you're in an allegorical temple. You're in King Solomon's temple here. And so we need to those elements are important. And I really start this off even with our prospective members when they show up to dinner for the first time. We'll have someone that, like I do a lot of posts, as on Facebook on our own lodge. And we have members, prospective members showing up as a result. And they will show up, and every prospective member that shows up, I give them a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And the reason why I give them that book is because I say, look, this is not a book on Freemasonry itself, but at the same time, it is a book on personal development. And this is the essence of Freemasonry, is personal development. And to me, the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, there's not too many other books that would compare to it. And so, and it's non-religious. If I could just hand someone the Bible, they might say, "Well, I'm a Jew. I don't believe in half of your book." Right. So giving the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, I think it really helped to start that prospective member on a journey to start realizing that it is an organization of self-improvement, and it's not just something like the Elks or the Moose, that it's strictly for social engagement. It's something that we're actually going to learn through osmosis. I mean, through brothers like yourself, teaching them about Freemasonry, and then they learn something, and the idea is that they'll go ahead and teach the next guy that comes through. So it's a system of constantly giving back, to it, and I think that's the important thing.
If I might interject here, I think
Yes.
that is another brilliant thing, because of course Marcus Aurelius is one of the major Stoic philosophers.
Yes.
And so much of what we do in Freemasonry, at least what we learn, maybe not directly through the ritual, but through the experiences that we have, especially, a lot of times people come in when they're younger and they learn from those around. And sometimes people get a little bit burned, in dealings with people, and you build that harder shell too. And that's part of, the Stoicist mindset, is that you can only be responsible for your own actions, and the reality that you live is completely fabricated in your mind. So any situation can either be good or bad. You can learn from it, or you cannot learn from it. And that's really illustrated well in Meditations. And it's a very important part of the degree work, even though it may not be addressed directly.
And I'm glad you familiar with that book there, Worshipful Justin. I had a lot of everything I'm talking about this evening. I had zero clue of any of this stuff when I first became a Mason. Zero. I was in the Marine Corps, right? So I'm not reading about philosophy. You know what I mean? It wasn't my thing. So getting into all these thought processes, Stoicism, and all this, that happened by getting to Freemasonry, and it's really important. Like for example, we learned about temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. Well, learning that, I went into the background where this came from, and come to find out these are all Stoic principles. So then that's what got me down the path of Stoicism as well, just wanting to understand all that, kind of see where that came from. So, and kind of see what they represent, temperance, fortitude, prudence, justice. I mean, it's, there's so much in Freemasonry, and I think it's hard to really understand what goes on in Freemasonry unless you kind of have a more of the base, unless you really start digging into the ritual work itself. And again, this is my third Masonic jurisdiction. I hope I stay in New Mexico for a very, very long time, because it's very difficult to try to translate these words that I knew from Virginia to Idaho, now to New Mexico, having these longer passages of ritual, to try to get it right, and I'm constantly having to re-examine them by default. And I think this is where my thought process on education comes from, because I'm constantly reviewing ritual work as a result. So, but after my year in the East here, I do plan on venturing into the York Rite. I do want to join the Royal Arch, and kind of really explore those degrees. It's not something I've really had the time to do. And I'm the type of guy where if I join something, I pretty much go all the way into it, or else I don't even do it. If I don't have time to do it, I don't want to just do the degree and get out. It's like, if I go into it, I want to know further what's in those degrees. And I know I'm going to have to learn whatever ritual work that's in there too.
I'm going to tell you something.
To better understand it.
You'll absolutely love the York Rite degrees, principally the
I'm sure I
chapter
will.
degree.
Yeah.
I mean that's probably where I'm most dedicated. Anybody who knows me knows that I am above everything else, probably most dedicated to Royal Archmasonry, and
Nice.
I'm very proud of it. And I think that you will really get a lot from it. You know, and I see all of these people here who are listening, who I'm very familiar with, and they're very brilliant people, far more intelligent than I. And I really wish that they would ask some questions. Jesse Crawford, wonderful fella, very intelligent. You have anything? Randy Clark, please ask away.
And just to let you know, a lot of where I learned from is I learned from other brothers, right? That are giving their take on a topic. That's why I'll have an EA to give a presentation in the lodge about the 24-inch gauge and the common gavel. I want to hear his interpretation of what that allegory is because I learned something new all the time as a result. Like I could have a solid understanding of where the words came from, thanks to books like The Mason's Words by Most Worshipful Robert Davis and things. But to really understand allegories, it's being to, see what individual interpretations are, because I think that's where the difference comes in. Because whatever I think, it's not absolute. All my allegorical thought, it's not an absolute thing. What is absolute is stuff like, hey, the Premier Grand Lodge of England formed in June 24, 1717. Okay, that's an absolute, but absolute about allegories, I don't think there is none because it's all different based upon a Mason's experiences in life.
Yeah, I would agree with you
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. So, how do you think that we should go forward in Freemasonry? Do you think that we should bring a lot of these concepts to the forefront that we're kind of hiding for whatever reason, maybe to make it seem more palatable to a larger group of people? What I have seen is that upcoming people, younger generations who are joining, are far, far more open to the esoteric than what previous
Yes.
generations were. When I joined Freemasonry almost 25 years ago, Freemasonry, you joined, you learned ritual work, and you donated uh, lots of money to charity, and that was what Masons did. And now, I mean, with a lot of the people that I roll with, or hang out with, socialize with in Freemasonry, it is much more based on esotericism and digging deeper into things that we discussed tonight. And uh, we are returning to a more mindful and reflective, charity is an individual Mason's responsibility, not necessarily the responsibility of a lodge, a grand lodge, or whatever. And that we should see it as such, where it's my responsibility to be a charitable person, not to expect the whole group. And the whole focus is turning inward, which I think returns to our historical roots. And I want to know what your opinion is on that.
Every Mason has their own thought process about Freemasonry, why they came into it in the first place. And I don't think there's no right way to be a Mason or to focus on Masonry. We've got a brother, all he wants to focus on is charity work or community events. That's all he wants to do. And you know what? I love that brother because it gets our lodge out into the community to do things, So, like without him, I wouldn't have had any kind of focus on community events. So every Mason, every brother has their place in a lodge, and it's what makes an entire lodge go well. But we also have brothers that coming in, like you mentioned, newer guys especially, and they're seeing this stuff online, and they want to know the secrets of the universe here, and they think we have it because that's the perception. Freemasons, presidents were Masons and all this stuff. We know the secrets. And so they come onto the lodge with this thought process. And so I think it's important to be able to cater to those brothers as well, because and we got to be able to have when we have a prospective member, especially when a brother becomes an entered apprentice, to direct him to others who are focused in the same things he's focusing on. Then this way, he's enjoying Freemasonry the way how he wants to enjoy Freemasonry. One different thing in our lodge is that since I joined it a few years ago, we all now for the most part, wear suit and ties in the lodge versus, jeans and polo shirts, So I think that there's a certain aspect, and a lot of what I get is from reading books. So, for example, there's a great book called "Observing the Craft" by Right Worshipful Brother Andrew Hammer. He gave a presentation to our lodge earlier this year as well. Had numerous conversations with him in person when he lived in Virginia. And it was about how a Mason dresses and all these kinds of things. It would make it a place where folks would actually want to meet and do things differently that way. So I think every brother has a important aspect to the lodge, but for whatever reason they joined a lodge, we really need to harness that energy, because they could be easily just doing this stuff online. Our numbers are already dropping big time. So when we do have someone knocking on a door, let's do the best we can to guide them in the craft the best we can, especially with a focus on personal development, which I think is really the heart and soul of Freemasonry.
Well, I would agree with you. And, it doesn't have to be this small tent where we just talk about one thing, whether that's charity or whether that's ritual or whether that is esotericism. I mean, we can just grow the tent bigger,
Yeah.
and I understand that there are a lot of people who kind of think it's got to be one way, only one way, and that's not ever true.
I used to have that idea one time. And but with more experience and conversations with brothers, my mind has shifted a lot since I became a Mason in 2012. So when I joined a shrine, I'm a Shriner. I joined a shrine when I was in Idaho, and things fantastic organization. And that's really a charitable arm of Freemasonry, and I think that if I had more time to invest in the craft, that's where I would spend more time at, is in a shrine, things like that. So it's whatever time of day you have, how much time you have, using that 24-inch gauge. If you only have a few hours a week, how are you going to best to apply that to Freemasonry? So for me, it becomes the esoteric work, the ritual work that I'm constantly learning and relearning. And I actually teach the proficiencies to our EAs and even Master Masons, because I want them to get the proficiency work done.
Well, yeah, that's obviously very important to Freemasonry, because I mean, if you don't know the story, then you don't know the value, and vice versa. Um, um, hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a lot of questions, but none really strike me at the moment. I'd really like to hear if any of the people who are listening have any questions, if there's anything that they would have jump in with, or any comments or anything, because I'm sure that Brother Burks here would be more than happy to engage.
Yeah, and the thing is that with questions, I mean, I tell all of our even prospective members, I'm like, dude, if any question about anything appertaining to Freemasonry or thoughts, I definitely want to answer them. I like questions that come at me that I don't know how to answer, because it forces me to study the topic a little bit more, to be a little more well-rounded in it. But yeah, yeah,
Would you do me a favor? You're recording this, correct?
yes.
Would you be able to send that to me? Because I know that there I've had several people who said, Warren Bauer, I think it is, we meet tonight. I can't be able to tune in because my AMD meets tonight. And I'd like to send it to the Grand Master of Ohio because he's really into these type of things. So there's several people that I would like to share it with, and there's somebody. Oh, Errol said that he would really like to see you present again, and hopefully, with luck, we'll be able to arrange that in some fashion or form.
Yeah, Wishful Justin, there are so many topics, man. There's this one article I wrote back in shortly after I became a master mason, and the topic was about it was a short article, maybe like 3 pages long, but I titled it "Let There Be Light," and from the very start, I encourage masons to come up with presentations on their own. And the reason for that is because if you were to come up with a presentation on your own, say about the Masonic apron, however way you want to talk about it, it could be about the history of it, where it came from, for real, more honorable than a golden fleece or Roman eagle. Well, what does a golden fleece have to do with anything with the Roman eagle? Why are those things in there, right? And why is, for example, the apron, why do we have a square and then a four-sided, symbol as a square, and then of course a three-sided symbol as a triangle at the top? Why is that, right? So why is it lands, so there are so many questions, so many presentations a brother can come up with about the Masonic apron, that it could be just total allegorical, right? Like his interpretation could be, well, gosh, you got the four and you got the three, and the square, it's like the compasses on top of the square and how that represents Freemasonry. So there's a whole bunch of things. But Brother Logan, I notice you do have your hand up.
Yes, Worshipful. I just wanted to say I appreciate you sharing the link to watch this presentation. On you've said before in some conversations in the past about this allegory, and I appreciate watching you expand upon it because I feel like I understand it a lot more. I did before, definitely. You know, when you say demons, and you mentioned demons in the Bible, and anything in terms of demons in masonry, it's kind of like a whoa, what is that? But then when you talk about it in terms of an allegorical phrase of taking your inner demons, and that being kind of like a contrast, or kind of like an allegory or an association with what we with our working tools, and working on building our temple. It makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate this presentation, and I just give a comment that it makes a lot more sense. Your on the association with building Solomon's temple, and then and the rays of demons, and taming your inner demons and building your. I really like that association, and in that way, in terms of kind of clearing kind of that way of associating demons, not necessarily in terms of negative aspect, but everything that we all have inside of us as our vices, and naming those as a way of our inner temple. So thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, thanks for that comment there, Brother Logan. Yes, Worshipful Justin.
Worshipful Blurks. Errol just sent me a message, and he wanted to know if when I get a copy of this recording, if he could share it to his counsel, Clarence O'Neill here in Ohio. Um, he would just want to know if you would give me permission to give it to him so that he could share it in their meeting.
Yeah, I would that would be awesome. I understand that, like, when we do Zoom presentations like this, even though they say, well, it's for Master Masons only, and it's because of the things we talk about, but really the stuff that I do leave out, even on Zoom, because, hey, man, this is social media, right? You don't know who's watching. So, I leave out all the modes of recognitions, right? The true, secret stuff that we don't share, right? So all that stuff is not here anyway. So yeah, I'd be happy to share that.
Yeah. He's wanting to share it with his AMD, and to be a member of AMD, you have to at least be a Royal Arch Mason. So
Yes.
it won't be anything that's outside of what people have already been exposed to. But given that it's 8:40 here in Ohio, and I have to be up extremely early in the morning.
Okay.
So I mean, I encourage everyone else who's still listening to interact with you, but I am going to have to dismiss myself. And please, if you would send me this recording at your very earliest convenience, because I would like to get it out to as many people as possible. That'll, help spread, your message to more people, and it has your contact information, so you might get more people contacting you and everything. Because it I've had several people already text me and tell me that it was fantastic, and they were very glad that and grateful that you presented for everyone tonight.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, Worshipful Justin, and for you to reaching out to me in the first place with this. And a lot of this isn't just about me giving a presentation of sorts, right? It's about encouraging other brothers to do the same thing. Because if you do that, if any brother gave a presentation on a topic they had not much information, not much clue about, not only would they better understand that topic themselves, but everybody else in the lodge would come away with learning something else as well. So
That's true. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect, and
okay,
please send this to me at your earliest convenience.
I
And
will.
you have a fantastic evening. I know it's only 6:42 out there in New
Sorry, the
Mexico.
sun is still shining out here. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, you enjoy what's left of the evening, and I hope everyone, those who are still here, can continue this discussion. So good night.
okay, Worshipful Justin, thank you so much. And thank you so much, brethren of the AMD and everyone else here on this call for tuning in. And if there are no other questions or concerns, I'm going to sign off as well and let the rest of you enjoy your evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Worshipful. Thank you. That was a wonderful evening tonight. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. I appreciate you being on here. It's my total pleasure for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a great night.